Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of Sovereign Grace churches with our executive director. Mark, on a previous podcast, we spent some time talking about how you and the leadership team are seeking to steward the remarkable global expansion that God has brought to us in Sovereign Grace. We want to build our global partnerships well and wisely. And on a previous podcast, we talked about a global strategy to do that, to seek to ensure that we are partnering well and wisely. Uh, and you recently updated the executive committee about how that's going, and you wanted to talk to us about it.
Yeah, I do. Last week at the executive committee retreat, I was giving them just a broad update on a number of things and happening in Sovereign Grace on a number of different categories. One of those being our global expansion, and the executive committee, like me, we are so grateful to God for the opportunities that He's given us to plant churches and partner with churches throughout the world. I mean, we're stunned actually.
Hmm.
We're just following God in something we
Yeah.
never expected that we would follow Him in, and all these opportunities we have, it is the Lord's doing,
Hmm.
and it's marvelous in our eyes. We're grateful for it. We're trying to respond to it in a wise way,
Yeah.
but the main thing is that God gets all the glory.
Yes.
This is not some, big plan that we had. It's just God at work,
Yeah.
advancing the gospel and saving more
Amen.
people who don't know Christ as their Savior. So that's where we start. But with expansion comes responsibility. This
Hmm.
is what I was explaining to the leadership, or excuse me, to the executive committee last week. And that responsibility is to steward wisely what we have now,
Yes.
and get that right so that as we expand in the future, we've built something foundational and solid and good. And there's a number of ways we're trying to do that as a leadership team. But I walk them through our global strategy, which has really 7 anchors to it. And I've mentioned those, as you said, in a previous episode, but I want to mention those again for a specific reason. But let me just give you the anchors first. Here are the 7 anchors. Theological education is a strategy because it
Hmm.
fosters not only theological fidelity, but certainly theological consistency as we expand in different parts of the world. The second is ecclesiological clarity. Really, that emphasis on the local church that you see in the New Testament is what we want to
Yes.
continue to emphasize. And it gives clarity on the mission of the church, obviously, and therefore a family of churches. And obviously, you include in that our polity structure. So you just want to make sure we bring ecclesiological clarity to our global expansion. The third is relational development. Yes, we are a denomination, but we're also a family of churches that want to
Right.
continue to build relationally. And sort of embedded in that anchor is our desire to care for pastors, and certainly our desire to build a relational, interdependent partnership across churches in Sovereign Grace. So that's an important anchor for us. Fourth one is missional risk. We must be willing to take prayerful, thoughtful, faith-filled risks to advance the gospel. You
Yes.
see that in the New Testament and Book of Acts in particular, especially. The fifth anchor is leadership development, which means a couple of things. We want to invest into our national leaders throughout the world, our global leaders, and at the same time, we want to make sure our churches are investing into developing the next generations of pastors.
Right.
The sixth anchor is financial stability. And part of what that aims at is what we'd love to do is to build financially self sustaining nations. That's going to
Hmm.
take longer in some nations than in other, but that's where we're wanting to aim. And then seventh, cultivating and maintaining zeal in our churches.
Hmm.
That really gets at the ethos, right? It's
Yeah.
the culture that we want to live for Jesus, and there's a
Yes.
zeal of living for Jesus. So that gets to things like application and preaching that helps
Hmm.
us apply the gospel and grow in Christ's likeness, for example. It's passionate worship because in following Jesus, we love to sing to Jesus because of all that He's done for us. So those are the anchors that are there, and they really do shape our strategy as we expand. And as we do that with God's help and by God's grace, these will guide us. And I wanted to mention them because I do want to share some updates of just some of the things in the last 2 weeks that have been happening in Sovereign Grace throughout the world. But as I give those updates, I do want to make connections to those strategic anchors.
Excellent. Well, uh, it's easy to see how those are thoughtful, wise, and biblically informed anchors that will serve us and have been serving us in our growing partnership. You sent out the Costa Rica missions video, I
Yeah.
believe last week or around then. We showed it at our church on Sunday. What a delight to see what God's doing in Costa Rica. How humbling that our brother pastor Juan Ho going to Lebanon to plant churches there, and all of it in the context of our family of churches. And like you mentioned, the last couple of weeks have brought some more good news, some global updates to your attention you want to share with us, including partnership with some new Sovereign Grace partner and candidate churches globally.
Yeah, it's crazy. This all happened last week. So at
Nice.
the executive committee retreat, I asked them, and they unanimously approved the Emerging Nation Partnership Agreement for Family of Grace Church in Thailand.
That's good.
So they are now a full partner church. I'm not going to use the name of the pastor, the church planter, just for security reasons, but we now have, I mean, who would ever think
Mm.
that Sovereign Grace would have a partner church in Thailand? My
Amazing.
goodness. Again, this is the Lord's doing, and it's
Yes.
marvelous in our eyes. Also, last week, Dave Taylor and I approved two candidate churches. And just to remind folks, candidate churches, it means that they are intentionally pursuing partnership in Sovereign Grace, full partnership. And the next
Mm.
step is for these churches, the elders in these churches, at least one of them, to go through our ordination process. So the
Nice.
first one that we approved last week is Chiesa Gracia Verte in Catania, excuse me, Catania, Sicily, Italy.
Mm.
That is led by Giuseppe Fortuno, and he is a dear man. And I want
Mm.
to give credit to Ed O'Mara, our area leader in Europe, who
Yes.
has worked for the last probably 3 years with this church and with Giuseppe as they explored the possibility of partnership. And that church is now very excited about beginning that process of formalizing partnership. And Giuseppe will be going through the ordination process. His first language is obviously Italian, so pray for him
Mm.
as he navigates that, and pray for Ed as well. The second one that we signed is in Brazil. It's Igreja Casa Vide in Sao Bernardo das Campos, Brazil. It is led by Rafael Yamashiro and Andre Casimiro, two men that Bert Turner's gotten to know. Bert was down in Brazil earlier this year, spent, I think, 8 weeks there, if I remember
Wow.
right, and really invested into these men in this church. So thank you, Bert, for
Yes.
what you've done,
Thank you,
Bert
Bert.
Turner. And they are pursuing ordination in Sovereign Grace. So with the signing of those, we now currently have 98 full partner churches in Sovereign Grace,
Nice.
70 outside of the United States, and 28 70 in the States and 28 outside of the United States. We also now have 43 candidate churches. All of those are
Mm.
outside of the United States. So if you add those numbers together, we have 141 partner and candidate churches. And I'm aware of a few more that could come before the pastors conference. So I'll look forward to giving an update there. So under all of that sort of update, those numbers reflect the anchor of ecclesiological clarity there.
Yes.
It's the polity. There's a process for which churches can come into sovereign grace. You're also seeing there in ecclesiological clarity the focus on the local church and certainly establishing a church in Thailand, and that's another theological, or excuse me, strategic anchor, which is missional risk.
Yes.
There's risks that this family has taken to see a church planted in Thailand. So just some updates from just last week in terms of one new partner church and two new candidate churches.
Wonderful updates. Thank you to Bert and Ed for
Mhm.
their sacrificial and faithful efforts over years to shepherd these relationships and bring them into partnership. It is a wonderful thing to see, and all under the leadership, of course, of our Director of Global Missions, Dave Taylor. So grateful for
Yeah,
Dave and the good work he's been up to for many years,
yeah,
including something that you and Dave participated in recently, the Global Leaders Fellowship, because we do have this one of the anchors is leadership development,
yeah,
and that includes you guys seeking to invest in and equip this growing circle of global friends and pastors.
yeah.
So you guys had the Global Leaders Fellowship. Talk to us about what happened there.
Yeah, Dave did a great job of leading through a Zoom meeting yesterday. We're looking to do Zoom meetings with them once a quarter, then a retreat with them every other year. And one of those Zoom meetings was yesterday that I had the privilege of participating in. But a shout out to Dave and his leadership.
Yes.
First of all, these men they work so hard in establishing and serving and pastoring their own churches, but in the nations where they work, and in Ed Omer's case, a whole continent of Europe. So I just there's a few updates from yesterday that are just new to me, and I want you to hear them as well.
Good.
Let me start with uh, just pastors' colleges.
Mm.
There's a pastors' college in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, led by Josh Pinnell, Trinity Fellowship Pastors College. Michael Granger, the senior pastor of Trinity Fellowship, is also involved in the Pastors College, said that they are just about ready to start their next PC class. It's got 10 students in it.
All right.
Six are Ethiopians, two Kenyans, and
Mm.
one Ugandan,
Mm.
one from Uganda, and one Pakistani. So
Wow.
that is quite a mix of guys. And
Fantastic.
the
Yeah.
the the, the Trinity Fellowship Pastors College there in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, is a strategic, I think, pastors college for us because it's the key in terms of building in Africa. But as you're hearing, even there they've got a student coming from Pakistan. So
Yes.
be praying for that class. And then last year. Carlos Contreras started a pastor's college in Juarez. He had one there years ago, started again. And Edgar is helping him with that. They
Mm.
graduated their first class. They're starting their next class now. It's just beginning. It has four
Excellent.
students, three from Mexico and one from Costa Rica. And they're,
Nice.
they're, they're trying something out with the student from Costa Rica. He'll actually be doing that remotely, virtually, and then he'll
Mm.
be coming to Juarez every so often for face-to-face classroom instruction. So, some exciting updates about the students and where they're from who are getting theological education. And that's our first strategic anchor is theological education. That's what those PCs reflect in terms of building strategically. And then we'll talk a little bit about church planning. Carlos Contreras was sharing yesterday they are planning and praying about and hoping to plant two new churches in Mexico sometime
Mm.
over the next year, probably,
Let's
or
go.
two. One in Chihuahua and one in Guadalupe. The one in
Nice.
Guadalupe, many of our listeners may have been to Rancho 3M, the orphanage
Yeah.
there. And this church plant would sort of be near there and associated with that in some sort of way. So
Nice.
those church plants reflect missional risk
Mm.
as a strategic anchor. And then it was so interesting to me. One of the things that surprised me yesterday as I listened to these guys give updates are the number of churches that are growing.
Mm.
And that's
Good.
just wonderful to see. So Jeffrey Joe, who leads his church there in Manila, Philippines area, is talking about how the church is growing. And recently, not only his church, but a couple of the churches he works with and are partner churches, they're drawing folks from the LGBTQ community who
Mm.
are coming back again, and they're hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so they're
Wonderful.
wanting to figure out how do we navigate all of that. They're so glad they're there.
Praise
they
God.
they want to see them saved. but that obviously there's pastoral implications there for them.
Yeah.
Michael Granger was talking about how Trinity Fellowship is growing in Addis Ababa,
Mm.
Ethiopia. They're about to add 40 new members, and their next new members class already has
Wow.
50 people registered for it. So
Oh,
he's like, my challenge is this: I need more pastors. I need more
yeah.
Ethiopian pastors
Right.
that can help me shepherd this flock. And he does have right now two elders who are Ethiopian, a third Ethiopian who's about to finish his ordination process. And
Mm.
Michael's desire is for the Ethiopian pastors to eventually lead that church. That's just how we build in Sovereign Grace. I love his vision.
Mm.
Ed O'Mara's church
Mm.
in Torino, Italy, is starting to grow, and he's at work in the hard ground of Europe,
Mm.
where it's hard to sow gospel seeds. But they've added, I think, two or three people, um, and that tells you a couple of things. First of all, growth there is very, very, very slow. And Ed
Right.
was just saying that's part of my heart challenge. I want things to go
Yes.
faster, but at the same time, just the fact that a church is growing in any way is a wonderful thing, and really a testimony of how God is at work and
Mm.
advancing the gospel. And then Carlos was just talking about Iglesia Gracia Soberana in Juarez,
Mm.
how it recently, probably over the last year, has just grown. People that are coming they didn't expect, and so they're trying to figure out, even some space issues in that regard. They're
Mm.
adding on to the building to have some more classroom space, for
Wow.
example. So all of that was just I wasn't aware of and just very encouraged by. And I share that because it reflects local churches building wisely.
Yeah.
And when local churches build wisely, a family of churches builds wisely.
Mm.
And a lot of what you're seeing there is ecclesiological clarity, that anchor there, but also relational development. Part of what the guys were talking about yesterday is, with growth, you love it, but there's also pastoral issues, and you realize pastors need care as well. So
Mm.
there's that relational development, that strategic anchor that you hear there. And just one other thing that I mentioned in terms of local churches building wisely. This was so encouraging to hear. Michael Granger just held his first pastors and wives retreat for his local elders there in Addis Ababa,
Mm.
Ethiopia. And it was, Michael and Kanan, obviously, and then these three Ethiopian brothers and their wives, just investing into them, and that strengthens them for the future. Again, that gives you the strategic anchors of relational development, ecclesiological clarity, and also leadership development. So,
Right.
just some updates that are fresh in the last 2 weeks that
Excellent.
really gives some expression of how God is at work in this little small denomination
Mm.
called Sovereign Grace in ways we never anticipated. And again, God gets all the glory.
Yes, he does. Personally, especially with the updates about Italy and what's going on there, I have to admit, my mom's side of the family were Brancas. The Italian is my favorite part of my ethnic background, and so I just love seeing what God's doing through the faithful efforts of Ed and other guys there in Italy. A lot of us were around a number of years ago when, at a council of elders, you talked about how no longer are we going to consider ourselves conceptually as a North American denomination with global partners, but that we are a global family of churches. And you fast forward a number of years and just reflecting on all God has been doing, and that really has become increasingly true, this global family of churches. And on top of that, just hearing the updates with all of these faithful pastors and partners, Josh Panal, Michael Granger, Jeffrey Joe, Carlos. I mean, even for those of us who haven't met these men, I'm sure these are men have become dear to us. Just
Yeah,
hearing how God is
that's
at
right.
work in their lives through their churches and their efforts, and so God has been and continues to be so good to us. He is so faithful and kind, and I'm grateful. I'm sure I speak on behalf of so many checking out the podcast. We're grateful for the way, Mark, you've led us through all of this, and the leadership team and the contributions of so many all throughout Sovereign Grace and across the globe. So thanks for the updates, Mark. And thank you all for checking out the podcast. We'll see you here next week, Lord willing. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.